The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Manhattan glittered with chandeliers, champagne flutes, and the polished pride of New York's elite. Flashbulbs snapped like fireworks as tuxedos mingled with designer gowns. Journalists whispered over notepads, ready to capture every powerful word from the man of the hour. Ethan Cole adjusted the cuffs of his tailored black suit and stepped up to the podium. At 38, he was the youngest billionaire tech mogul in the city. Founder of Colean Technologies, the man who started in a Brooklyn garage now stood before senators, CEOs, and celebrities, ready to launch his newest philanthropic initiative, the Cole Future Foundation for Underprivileged Children. His sharp jaw, salt and pepper stubble, and calm authority commanded the room. He gave a polite nod, then leaned toward the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice low and magnetic. "When I was a kid, I didn't have much. A tiny apartment, a single mom who worked double shifts. No silver spoon, no trust fund, just grit and a dream." Polite applause. He continued, warming up. "I created this foundation because no child should be invisible. Every one of them deserves a shot, to learn, to grow, to matter." As he paused for effect, his eyes scanned the front rows, high-profile guests, donors, hospital staff, and a small section reserved for children from St. Jude's Pediatrics. That's when it happened. A little girl, no more than 6, stood up from her seat in the middle of the pediatric section. She wore a too-big flowered dress, and her untamed brown hair frizzed out in pigtails. A sticker clung to her forehead like a badge of honor. Her voice was soft, but in the ballroom silence it carried like thunder. "You look like my dad." The words cut through the air. Laughter stopped, glasses froze mid-sip, phones lowered, even the waiters at the back paused. Ethan blinked. He looked straight at the girl, a pair of wide hazel eyes staring right back at him, full of quiet certainty. Her small hand clutched a folded piece of paper, maybe a drawing, maybe a letter. A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the crowd. On instinct, his fingers gripped the podium harder. Ethan started, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat, trying to shake the sudden tremble in his chest. "That's sweet of you, kiddo." The girl didn't sit down. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. "Do you remember my mommy? Her name was Amanda." Ethan's spine stiffened. He stumbled back half a step, the blood draining from his face. Amanda. The name shot through his mind like a storm. A name he hadn't heard in years. A name that came with memories he'd buried under million-dollar deals and late-night coding marathons. He glanced toward the back, trying to find someone, anyone, to explain this. His assistant, Rachel, stood near the curtain with a confused look. She started moving toward the stage. The ballroom had gone silent. Ethan looked back at the girl. Her eyes hadn't moved. She smiled just a little and then sat back down as if nothing had happened. Ethan turned to the mic again, his throat dry. "Ladies and gentlemen, he forced a smile. "Please enjoy the rest of the evening, thank you." He walked off the stage. Rachel met him backstage, whispering urgently, "Ethan, what happened? You looked like you saw a ghost." "I might have," he muttered, not breaking his stride. "Who was that little girl?" "I don't know," Ethan lied. His heartbeat thundered. "But I need to find out." Behind them, the crowd was buzzing again, pretending the moment never happened, but the room wasn't the same. Something had cracked. Back in the ballroom, the little girl tugged on her caretaker's sleeve. "Julia," she whispered, "that's him, I know it." Julia, in blue scrubs under a modest blazer, looked down nervously. "Lily, what did you do?" "I just told the truth," Lily said innocently. "He looks just like the picture." She pulled out the crayon drawing she'd made earlier. A stick-figure man with big hair, a smiling little girl holding his hand, and a woman with a heart over her head. Julia's eyes filled with tears. "That's not how the world works, honey," she whispered, hugging Lily tight. "Some people aren't ready for the truth." But Lily simply held the drawing to her chest and looked back toward the curtain where Ethan had disappeared. He will be, she said. The gala had returned to its glossy rhythm. Orchestras resumed playing. Champagne flutes clinked again, but none of it reached Ethan Cole's ears. He stood alone in a quiet corner backstage, still gripping the edges of the crayon drawing he'd picked up from the carpet. The stick figures were childishly sketched, yet oddly haunting. A little girl, a woman, a tall man with his wild hair sticking up like his. And that name, Amanda. Rachel approached quietly, holding a tablet. We got a list from the hospital's guest coordinator. I'm sorting through the names now. It was probably just a confused kid. Ethan didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the colors scribbled into that paper, especially the two red hearts drawn above the man and the woman. I need you to find out who she is, he said finally. The girl and the woman with her. Rachel looked up. You think she's actually telling the truth? Ethan hesitated, then quietly said, she said Amanda. Rachel froze. Even she had heard that name once before, late at night in an old conversation over bourbon. Amanda had been the one woman he never discussed, not publicly, not in interviews. She was from his past, a soft memory buried under the steel of who he had become. I thought you said she moved away, Rachel whispered. She did, or she said she would. His voice trailed off. Rachel tapped furiously on her tablet, narrowing down the guest list. There's a Julia Matthews listed pediatric nurse. She brought a few patients from St. Jude S. No Amanda listed. Ethan exhaled slowly. Set up a meeting tomorrow with her. Julia pulled Lily along by the hand as they hurried through the cold Manhattan night. The gala had ended, and they were late catching the last bus. Did I do something wrong? Lily asked, clutching her drawing protectively. Julia sighed, kneeling down to zip Lily's jacket all the way up. You can't just tell strangers they're your dad, sweetie. But he looks just like him, and his name is Ethan, too. Julia's chest tightened. That doesn't mean anything, it's a common name. Lily squinted. Isn't it his eyes? You said I got my eyes from my real dad. Julia didn't answer. She stood and guided her toward the bench. Lily looked up again. Mommy Amanda said he was nice. Did you know him too? Julia sat down slowly. Her voice was soft and strained. Yeah, baby, I knew him once, a long time ago, but people change. Lily tilted her head. Do I have his smile too? Julia smiled sadly. You have your own. Later that night, in their tiny two-bedroom apartment in Queens, Julia sat at the kitchen table under a flickering light bulb, staring at an old wooden box. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were a few photos, a hospital ID bracelet, and a letter, folded, slightly stained with time. The front read, For Ethan, if he ever asks. She had never mailed it, never had the nerve. Amanda had written it on her final night at the hospice, her breathing shallow, her voice shaking. If he asks, give him this, but don't go looking for him, Julia. He made his choice. He wanted success, not family. Julia held the letter in her hands now, like it was a live wire. I promised, she whispered. From the other room, Lily was humming to herself in bed. The sound floated out like a ghost, innocent, unaware. And then a knock came at the door. Julia startled, quickly hiding the letter back in the box. When she opened the door, a courier handed her a sleek white envelope sealed with a gold foil emblem. Inside was a message. Mr. Ethan Cole respectfully requests a private conversation with Nurse Julia Matthews. Location and time enclosed. It's about the girl. Julia stared at the signature at the bottom. She hadn't heard from him in 7 years. Ethan sat alone in his penthouse office, floors above the city noise, untouched scotch in hand. The lights were off. Only the reflection of Lily's drawing, now framed on his desk, glowed softly under the desk lamp. He turned to his massive digital screen and pulled up a file he hadn't opened in years, an old folder of photos labeled Amanda 2016. There she was, auburn hair, laughing in Central Park, holding a smoothie, hugging him after one of his first pitch wins. holding her swollen belly at 7 months, smiling nervously at the camera. He zoomed in on her eyes, those same hazel eyes. Then he opened another tab. He typed, "How accurate is a child's memory of a parent they've never met?" He scrolled for hours, but nothing prepared him for what he felt when he finally said it out loud, for the first time. "Could she be mine?" Rain splattered gently against the windows of the apartment as dawn broke over Queens. Julia stood in the kitchen in a faded t-shirt, staring blankly at the kettle as it began to whistle. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the hot water over the tea bag, but her mind wasn't in the room. The letter sat on the table again, Amanda's letter to Ethan, still unopened. 7 years had passed since Amanda died, yet her final request haunted Julia more now than ever. In the next room, Lily was asleep under a blanket full of stars and teddy bears. Julia walked in quietly, brushed a curl from her forehead, and kissed her temple. "God help me if I've opened a door I was supposed to keep shut," she whispered. Across the city, Ethan stood in front of the floor-length mirror in his penthouse closet. His crisp white shirt was perfectly pressed, collar sharp, but for once he wasn't thinking about appearance. His reflection looked tired. There were lines under his eyes he didn't recognize, not from stress or late-night emails, but from something deeper. From missing something you didn't know you lost. Rachel entered with her tablet, glancing up. "Your meeting is confirmed. Julia Matthews agreed to meet at the cafe across from St. Jude S. Noon." He gave a stiff nod. "Thanks." "She's not bringing the girl." That made him pause. Rachel hesitated. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Ethan met her eyes in the mirror. "No, but it's the right one." The bell above the cafe door jingled softly as Ethan stepped inside. He scanned the tables and spotted her instantly. Julia Matthews hadn't changed much, her dark hair still curled behind her ears, her eyes just as sharp. But something had shifted in her posture. The carefree college girl he once knew had become a woman who'd survived storms. She looked up as he approached, and their eyes locked for the first time in over 7 years. "Hi, Julia," Ethan said quietly. "Ethan," she nodded, reserved. "You look successful." He gave a dry smile. "You look strong." They sat in silence for a moment. Coffee steamed between them untouched. "Why now?" Julia asked, not looking at him. "I didn't know," he said simply. "You left. I thought I thought she didn't want me." "She wrote you," Julia snapped, then caught herself, her voice lowered. "She sent letters, emails, you never replied." He swallowed hard. "I never got them." Silence again. "I was building Colian. I was drowning in work. I wasn't ready to be." He stopped short of saying it. "Father, family, real." Julia crossed her arms. "Amanda waited. She hoped you'd come around, but then the cancer came fast. She didn't have time to beg." Ethan blinked rapidly. "I didn't know she was sick." "She died 3 days after Lily's first birthday." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. "I took her," Julia said. "Amanda asked me to raise her. I filed for custody. I moved, changed jobs. I didn't want the media storm. I didn't want to chase a man who made his priorities clear." Ethan stared at his hands. I could've." "You didn't," she said softly. "Not accusing, just a fact." He looked up. "Does she know?" Julia hesitated. "She knows she's adopted. She knows her real mommy is in heaven. She doesn't know about you. Not really." "But she said it," Ethan whispered. "You look like my dad." Julia nodded slowly. "Amanda kept a few photos. Lily's seen them. She drew that picture herself, said she just felt it." "I'd like to know her," Ethan said, voice steady now. "Please." Julia studied him. "Not because I'm a CEO, or because I'm trying to fix a PR nightmare, but because I think I missed the most important thing I'll ever do." Julia took a breath. "She's not some proof of redemption, Ethan. She's a person, a girl who's kind, smart, and strong. She loves drawing and hates carrots. She cries when she sees animals hurt and makes me listen to her read bedtime stories even when I'm exhausted. She's a little firecracker. I want to meet her, he said again. Julia's voice softened. Let me think about it. That evening, back home, Julia sat Lily down on the couch with a warm cup of cocoa. Hey, baby, remember the man from the speech? Lily's eyes lit up. The one who looks like my drawing. Julia smiled faintly. Yeah, him. Is he my real dad? Lily asked bluntly. Julia blinked. Kids didn't soften anything. I'm not sure, she said carefully, but he wants to meet you. Lily tilted her head. Do you think he likes bunnies? I have no idea, Julia said, chuckling despite herself. Can I meet him? Only if you want to. Lily beamed. Only if he brings a drawing too. That night, Julia reached for the wooden box again. This time, she pulled out the letter and placed it in her bag. Just in case. 3 days later, the sunlight filtered through the glass walls of Colean Tower, casting long shadows across Ethan's private conference room. He stood near the window, gazing out over Manhattan. Even the sweeping skyline didn't calm the ache in his chest. Rachel entered quietly with a discreet folder in her hand. I've confirmed everything, she said. Julia Matthews, pediatric nurse at St. Jude's for the last 6 years. No scandals, no debts, no red flags, she's clean. She always was, Ethan murmured, turning toward her. Rachel placed the folder on the glass table. The courier has the kit. She agreed to the test. Ethan gave a tight nod. I don't want to pressure her, but I have to know. Rachel hesitated. If the results are what we think, what happens next? Ethan exhaled. I have no idea. Later that day, the apartment was unusually quiet as Julia swabbed the inside of Lily's cheek, trying to make it feel like a game. Lily giggled and asked, Do I win something? You already did, Julia said, brushing her hair aside. You just don't know it yet. Lily squinted. Is it a dad? Julia laughed softly. Maybe. Do you like him? Lily asked. The question caught her off guard. Julia smiled faintly. I used to. She sealed the test envelope, heart pounding, and handed it to the courier waiting at the door. Meanwhile, Ethan stared at a photo on his desk, a recent paparazzi shot of him at the gala, standing behind the podium. But the media had zoomed in on Lily's face in the front row. Online forums were already buzzing. Who is the mystery child who made the billionaire CEO freeze? Secret daughter or publicity stunt? Ethan had refused to comment. But the silence wouldn't hold forever. That evening, Julia got a call. Hey, it's Rachel, the assistant said warmly. Ethan would really like to see Lily, nothing formal, no press, just lunch. Julia bit her lip. He doesn't even know yet. He doesn't care, Rachel replied. He just wants to know her. The first meeting. Central Park was Ethan's choice, open, simple, safe. Julia arrived with Lily, holding a bunny backpack and an oversized drawing pad. Ethan was already sitting on a picnic bench near the carousel, wearing jeans and a hoodie instead of his usual pressed suits. He looked 10 years younger. Lily spotted him and broke into a run. Hi, she beamed. I brought my markers. Ethan crouched and opened his arms instinctively, then caught himself. He didn't know if it was okay yet. Lily didn't wait. She hugged him tightly. For a second, Ethan forgot how to breathe. Julia stood nearby, watching carefully, protective but curious. Can we draw something? Lily asked excitedly. Ethan smiled. Only if I get to keep mine. They spent an hour sketching clouds, houses, and robots. Ethan drew a lopsided bunny. Lily laughed so hard she snorted. Julia watched as her world turned upside down. For the first time in years, her daughter looked whole. The next day, the test results arrived. Rachel placed the envelope on Ethan's desk. Do you want me to open it? Ethan shook his head. No, I need to do it. He opened the envelope slowly, hands shaking. 99.9% match, paternal confirmation, Ethan James Cole. The words stared back at him like a mirror to a life he had never imagined. He leaned back in his chair, silent. Then he closed his eyes and whispered, "She's mine." That evening, Julia answered the door, surprised to see Ethan standing there, no driver, no press, just him. A paper bag of Thai takeout in one hand, a folded letter in the other. "You cooked?" she asked, amused. "I can order like a champ," he said, holding it up. "Figured you might be tired." She stepped aside, letting him in. "I got the results," he said after they sat at the kitchen table. Julia nodded. "I figured. I'd like to be in her life, not just weekend visits or birthdays. I want to show up fully, every day." Julia studied him. "This isn't going to be easy." "I don't expect it to be, but I want it anyway." He placed the letter on the table. "Amanda wrote this. You can read it first, or not, I'll wait." Julia's fingers hovered over the envelope. She blinked fast, heart pounding. Then she slid it toward herself. Ethan didn't push. He just looked over at Lily's room and whispered, "She called me daddy today, and I didn't even earn it yet." Julia wiped a tear from her cheek. "You might have," she said softly. The kitchen clock ticked slowly as Julia sat with the unopened letter in front of her. The white envelope with Amanda's familiar handwriting felt heavier than anything she'd held in years. Ethan waited across from her, uncharacteristically quiet, his hands clasped tightly together. The CEO mask was gone. In its place sat a man, unsure, raw, afraid. Julia inhaled deeply and slid her finger under the seal. She pulled out the letter, its paper yellowed slightly with age. The words were in Amanda's delicate, looping script. She began to read aloud. "Dear Ethan, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you even care, but in case you ever come looking, in case something inside you shifts, here's the truth. You left when I needed you most, but I never hated you. I was angry, yes, hurt, of course, but not because you chased your dreams, because you shut me out. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought you'd come around. I thought you'd remember the softer version of us. The nights in that studio apartment. The ramen, the rain, the promises. But you didn't return my calls. You changed your number. Your assistant blocked me from your office. So I stopped chasing, and I raised her on my own. I named her Lily because she bloomed inside me even as I was dying. If you ever meet her, Ethan, please don't make her feel abandoned. Don't make her feel like I did. Just love her. That's all I ask." "Love Amanda." Julia's voice broke near the end. She folded the letter slowly and stared down at it, her throat tight. Ethan was pale. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear to you, Julia, I didn't get the calls. I didn't see the letters. My assistant back then, she shielded everything. She thought she was protecting my focus." Julia scoffed softly. "You were already gone long before the company took off." Ethan's voice cracked. "I never would have walked away from Amanda if I'd known. From Lily, I missed her first steps, her first word, her first everything." He leaned forward, eyes brimming. "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" Julia looked at him for a long moment. "She doesn't know you did anything wrong yet." That stung. And it was true. "I want to tell her," he said. "My side, who I was, who I am now." Julia folded her arms. "She's 6, Ethan. She doesn't need your guilt. She needs your presence. She needs pancakes on Sunday and bedtime stories and someone to tell her she's smart and beautiful and safe." "I can do that," he said quickly. "I want to do that." Julia stood and walked to the window, rain sliding down the glass. The city lights blurred like tears. "You want to fix it," she said, "but this isn't one of your deals. There's no fix. There's just showing up and staying." Ethan walked over to her, his voice low. "Do you hate me?" She turned toward him slowly. "No, I hated you once, when I sat in the hospital room holding Amanda's hand as she died, and you never came. I hated you when Lily cried for her mom and I had no answers, but I let it go. Why? Because I chose Lily, and holding on to hate would have poisoned me. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Ethan said softly, "Can I take her to the park tomorrow, just the two of us?" Julia looked hesitant. "I'll keep her safe. I'll bring her back. I won't overstep." A beat passed. "She's never been on a Ferris wheel," Julia murmured. "She's scared of heights." "I'll stay on the ground," Ethan smiled. Julia finally nodded. "Okay." Ethan exhaled. "Thank you." The next morning. The park was alive with children's laughter and the smell of popcorn. Ethan held Lily's hand tightly as she skipped beside him. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked. "You haven't even had lunch yet." She gave him puppy eyes. He caved. "Okay, but don't tell Julia." Lily grinned. "I'm good at secrets." They sat on a bench with chocolate cones. A squirrel darted near their feet. Lily squealed and laughed. Ethan watched her, amazed by the small details, how she held her cone, how her lashes fluttered when she blinked, how her laugh sounded like Amanda's. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lily's eyes widened. "Is it a toy?" Ethan opened it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, tiny charms shaped like a star, a heart, and a bunny. "I had this made for you," he said gently, "if it's okay." She looked up. "Why?" "Because I missed a lot of birthdays, and I wanted to give you something that says I'm here now." Lily stared at the bracelet, then quietly asked, "Are you really my dad?" Ethan's chest tightened. "Yes," he said. "I didn't know before, but I do now, and I'm so lucky to have found you." Lily didn't speak for a moment. Then she leaned over and hugged him. "Then I think you should come to my art show next week." Ethan blinked back tears. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." The art classroom at St. Jude's was buzzing with excitement. Paper butterflies dangled from the ceiling. Crayon drawings filled every wall. Cardboard animals, messy paint palettes, and handmade signs with phrases like "Believe in magic" gave the space an untamed joy. Ethan stood awkwardly near the back, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, Lily's favorite according to Julia. He wore jeans again. No security, no press, just a dad trying not to mess up. Lily spotted him first. Her eyes lit up. "You came." Ethan knelt down. "Of course I came." She threw her arms around him and squeezed. Her paint-splattered hands left colorful streaks across his shoulder, but he didn't care. "This is mine," she said proudly, pointing to a chaotic swirl of colors labeled "My Family." 3 figures were stick-drawn, a smiling woman, a bunny, and a tall man holding a little girl's hand. Ethan stared. "That's me," he asked. Lily nodded. "You have big ears in the drawing, though, sorry." He laughed. "I do, huh?" Julia walked up behind them, holding a plastic cup of punch. Her eyes softened seeing Ethan crouched beside Lily, both covered in splotches of color. "You blend in surprisingly well," she teased. He looked up at her. "I'd wear a tutu if she asked me to." Lily grinned. "Don't give me ideas." Over the next few weeks, the world shifted. Ethan began to show up. He picked Lily up from school on Fridays, took her to the library on Sundays, bought her art supplies instead of gadgets. They built a cardboard castle in his penthouse, ate peanut butter sandwiches at the office, painted his home office wall with murals of unicorns and clouds. Julia watched cautiously, but with growing admiration. One rainy afternoon, Ethan arrived at Julia's apartment, drenched and out of breath. In his hands, a plastic dinosaur Lily had forgotten at his place. "She couldn't sleep without it," he said sheepishly. Julia blinked. "You ran through traffic for a toy." Ethan looked at her like it wasn't even a question. "It's Rick's." She let him in and handed him a towel. At the park, Ethan and Julia sat side by side on a bench, while Lily chased bubbles around them. She talks about you constantly now, Julia said, smiling. She wants to name our next pet after you, even if it's a goldfish. Ethan chuckled. I'm honored. He paused, then added softly, I was a ghost for so long. I didn't even know I left behind something worth haunting. Julia looked at him, touched. You're not a ghost anymore, she said. A moment passed between them, gentle, electric, unspoken. Then Lily screamed, He popped my bubble, pointing dramatically at a squirrel. They both laughed. Later that week, the second gala. Another charity gala, but this time Ethan didn't bring a speech. He brought Julia and Lily. The media buzzed. Who was this woman? Who was the child? But Ethan walked past the cameras without comment. Inside, during dinner, he stood and tapped a spoon to his glass. I have no speech tonight, he said, but I have something better, a story. The crowd quieted. I once thought success meant money, power, attention. I built a company and sat on top of the world, but I was empty, because somewhere out there was a little girl and I didn't know her name. He turned toward Lily, seated between Julia and Rachel. She waved shyly. Her name is Lily, Ethan continued, and she calls me Dad. Gasps swept through the room. Julia's eyes glistened with tears. She and her mother changed everything about the way I define legacy. This isn't about funding schools or writing checks. This is about love, presence, redemption. He raised his glass to new beginnings. The room stood and applauded. But Ethan only looked at them, the two girls who gave him a second chance. That night, outside Julia's apartment. Ethan walked Julia to the door while Lily slept in the car. She was so proud of you, Julia whispered. I was proud of you, he replied. Every single day you've raised her alone. She shook her head. Not alone, Amanda gave me the strength and Lily gave me purpose. Ethan looked down. I don't know how to ask this without sounding selfish, but is there room for me? In our lives? He nodded. In yours. Julia hesitated, then smiled softly. There's a lot of room, Ethan, but you have to stay. No more running, no vanishing, no billion-dollar distractions. I'm not going anywhere, he said. She leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Good, she whispered, because Lily asked if you could come over for pancakes tomorrow. He grinned. I'll bring syrup. The smell of vanilla and butter filled the cozy apartment as Julia flipped pancakes in the small kitchen, wearing an apron that said Queen of Carbs. Lily stood on a chair beside her, squeezing whipped cream onto a plate with far too much enthusiasm. She's going to judge the pancakes, Julia warned as Ethan entered through the front door, holding a grocery bag. I brought the fancy syrup, Ethan declared, lifting the bottle like a trophy. And blueberries. Lily clapped. Fancy syrup, you're officially in the pancake club. Ethan smiled. Best club I've ever joined. They sat down at the table, Julia, Lily, and Ethan. A new version of family stitched together not by perfection but by choice, forgiveness, love. Lily poured syrup in loops and announced, This one's for Mommy Amanda. She'd want you to have extra syrup, too. A beat of quiet settled over them. Julia reached for Lily's hand. Ethan touched the photo frame sitting on the side counter, Amanda holding newborn Lily, radiant in her final days. Thank you, Ethan said softly, for everything. Julia met his gaze. We're still figuring it out, but it feels right. Lily beamed between them, her face sticky with syrup and joy. Can we all live together someday? Ethan paused. Julia smiled faintly. One day at a time, sweetheart. 1 month later, at a small children's gallery downtown, Lily's artwork was featured in a show called Big Hearts, Little Artists. Ethan wore a t-shirt that said, One Art Dad, and stood proudly beside her as she explained her drawing to guests. This is me and this is Mommy Julia, she said. And that's my real dad. I didn't know I had one until I saw him on a stage. People smiled, touched. And now I'm gonna teach him how to color inside the lines. Laughter broke out. Later that night, penthouse rooftop. Ethan and Julia stood on the rooftop terrace of Colean Tower. Below them, the city sparkled. "I never thought I'd be here," Julia admitted. "With me?" Ethan asked. "With someone who's trying this hard to be human," she teased. He laughed. "You keep me human." She looked at him for a long moment. "I love how you love her," she said. "That's the part of you I never got to see back then, and it's the best part." Ethan took her hand. "I was afraid before of being vulnerable, of losing control, but with her, and with you, I'm finally okay not being perfect." He pulled a small box from his coat pocket. Not a ring, but a charm. "A silver star." "For her bracelet," he said. "I want to earn my place, not just as her father, but as someone you can trust." Julia's eyes brimmed with emotion. "You already are," she whispered. Months later, another charity event was held, this time at the Children's Museum, fully funded by the Colean Future Foundation. No ballrooms, no champagne, just balloons, laughter, and paint-smeared cheeks. Ethan gave a short speech, but halfway through, Lily walked up to the podium. Everyone gasped. She tugged at his hand and whispered in the mic, "You forgot to say the most important part." He leaned down, grinning. "And what's that?" She whispered, "Tell them I'm your daughter." Ethan lifted her into his arms. "My daughter," he said proudly, "is the real reason we're all here." As applause filled the museum, Julia stood at the back, watching the two of them framed in light and joy. And for the first time in years, she felt at peace. She had protected Amanda's secret. She had raised a child in the shadow of loss. And now she had opened her heart again. Not to the man Ethan had been, but to the father and partner he had chosen to become.